If you want to write stories your readers will love, there are 3 things you need to do. Understand storytelling principles, see how other writers have applied the principles, and then use them in your own work. Here on the Story Nerd podcast, our goal is to demystify story theory. We'll help you with the first 2 steps so that you can get started with the third. My name is Valerie Francis. I'm a writer and a story editor, and I teach women who are writing in all genres how stories work so they can finish their books faster and without frustration.
And I'm Melanie Hill, editor, poet, and award-winning author of middle grade novel Jet Cooper, and I help writers identify and solve their story problems.
On today's episode, Melanie pitched Serenity so that we can study the premise. This 2005 film was written and directed by Joss Whedon. Of course, there will be spoilers because we can't talk about the movie without talking about the movie. And as always, we would love it if you could help other writers find our show simply by leaving a rating and review. For Apple Podcast listeners, you can do it from your phone. Just go to the show's landing page, scroll to the bottom, click the stars. It's that simple. And if you are watching us on YouTube, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Okay, Melanie, Serenity and the premise. How did you do this week?
Well, actually, this is really, really interesting this week, and I'll go into why. But my main aim this season, was to road test some methods or formulas that I've been collecting for creating premises and log lines and to see how they work, and also to see if some are more suitable for particular genres or not. Now, just as a very quick recap, the premise is a 1-sentence summary of your story that is used to test your story ideas, guide you through the writing process, or it can be used as the basis of your pitch once you've finished and submitted your story. Now, what's been interesting is that the formulas I've tested this season don't lend themselves to any particular genre, but they do rely on similar story information. And I'll summarize that story information next week in the best of episode, but I have talked about it in previous episodes this season, so go back and have a listen to those. Now, I know that I am creating a premise or a log line with movies that are complete, but the process of identifying the main story element of a finished work has led me to identifying structural story problems, or it's actually reinforcing the stories that actually have a strong story structure and or also satisfying stories. Now, this week, while I've been breaking down Serenity using Swain's lineup method and the framework that we use in our Trinity course, I've realized something fascinating about the middle build in this story. Now, what puzzled me was the protagonist's object of desire, because it changed 3 times as a result of the antagonist's overall objective of desire being slowly revealed and the stakes being raised. Now, explaining the slow reveal and the changing object of desire doesn't need to be in the premises method that I've chosen this week to use to analyze this, Serenity. I'll get it out there. I'll get it out. The log lines used to describe Serenity focus on the initial object of desire, but they also use very vague terms to describe what is happening. Now, this is because the purpose of the log line is to hook viewers or readers. Right, so I'll give you some examples now. So here's the first example, which is from the website Just Watch, and I'll quote what they say. When the renegade crew of Serenity agrees to hide a fugitive on their ship, they find themselves in an action-packed battle between the relentless military might of a totalitarian regime who will destroy anything or anyone to get the girl back, and the bloodthirsty creatures who roam the uncharted areas of space. But the greatest danger of all may be on their ship. Now, the protagonist in this log line or this description is identified as the crew of the Serenity. The antagonist is the relentless totalitarian regime who wants the girl and will destroy anything. Now, these are very vague phrases that pitch a David and Goliath battle, but we're not sure who or what the girl is and why she's important. And there's also a reference to a danger being on the Serenity, but there isn't a linkage to the girl. And if you watch the movie, you'll know, I think what they're inferring is that River, the girl, is actually the danger on the ship. And I don't think that's quite an accurate description, but anyway, that's what that log line or that description says. Now, the second log line that I've gotten this week is from the Rotten Tomatoes website, and I think it does a little bit better. So here it goes. In this continuation of the television series Firefly, a group of rebels travel to the outskirts of space aboard their ship, the Serenity, outside the reaches of the Alliance, a sinister regime that controls most of the universe. After the crew takes in Simon and his psychic sister, River, whom he has just rescued from the Alliance forces, they find themselves being pursued by the Operative, an Alliance agent who will stop at nothing to find them. Now, this summary is actually 2 sentences, but the protagonist is identified again as the crew of the Serenity, and they are described as a group of rebels. The antagonist is named as the Alliance, and the Operative is singled out as the face of the Alliance. Simon and River are named as the Operative's object of desire, but the crew's object of desire isn't identified at all. It sounds like the crew of the Serenity are along for Simon and River's ride. Now, I think the vague descriptions result from a very complex plot, and because Serenity's target audience, who followed and loved the series Firefly, already know the main players in the world. Now, I'm going to have a go at creating 2 premises that I would use to write a story like Serenity, and this is where I'll examine the middle build in a little bit more detail. So I'm going to use Swain's method, which is called the lineup, and there are 5 key elements to his method or his proposal or the way that he works out his 2 forms of premise or story description. Right, he has a character, so there's a focal character, so you need to name it. There's a situation, which is the trouble that forces the character to act, or the external state of affairs of that situation. There's the objective, which really states that the character who wants nothing can't be in trouble or have conflict. And it doesn't matter if they strive and succeed or they fail, they just need to have an objective. There's the opponent, so the antagonist or forces of antagonism. So that is the resistance, and they create the friction or the struggle. And then there's the disaster. So the character must face something awful, and we need to make this as concrete and specific as possible. Now, those 5 elements make 2 sentences. Sentence 1 is a statement, and it establishes the character, situation, and objective. Sentence 2 is a question, and it nails down the opponent and the disaster. So here is how I've broken it down for Serenity. The character is Mal, the captain of the Serenity, and he captains a crew of rebels who are hiding from the Alliance after being on the losing side in the colonial wars. The situation is that they are being hunted by the Alliance assassin, the Operative, who wants to retrieve River, a psychic who has memories of the most powerful government officials. And River is actually a member of the crew, and so is her brother Simon. Now, their objective is that Mal wants to keep his crew safe and get revenge on the Alliance. Mal also wants freedom. The opponent, well, the crew are being hunted by the Alliance's assassin so they can retrieve River and keep the Alliance's secrets out of the public domain. So the Alliance wants to maintain the status quo. The disaster. So here's where it gets interesting. So the disaster, I've kind of worked out that it's the crew. It links to the object of desire. So Mal wants to protect the crew. He wants to protect River. He wants revenge for the friends that have died as a result of the Alliance's pursuit of River. And he wants to put out the Alliance's secrets so that everybody knows. So there's something awful, I think, is the revelation that the Reavers are humans who have been turned into cannibals because of the actions and the chemicals that the Alliance used when they were terraforming the planet that the Reavers originated from. Now, so here's a bit of a go. And it doesn't work very well, but here's a bit of a go of what I think a premise could be. Mal Reynolds, the captain of the Serenity, seeks to destroy the Alliance when he discovers they covered up their creation of the cannibalistic Reavers when hunting one of Mal's crew and killing his friends who protect the Serenity. Now, this doesn't conform to Swain's format, but I do like how it captures the key events and the escalation of the personal stakes of the story. Now I'm going to use the premise sentence that we use in our Trinity courses, and it basically goes like this. When the inciting incident happens to the characters, they have to overcome obstacles to complete a quest in order to, or else what's at stake. So that's a bit of a formula, I suppose. But now we need to have a look at what those things are and break down those elements. So the inciting incident is that Mal puts River's life in danger when he takes her on a mission and Simon decides that he and River will leave the Serenity. The character or the main character is Mal Reynolds. The obstacle they need to overcome is to defeat the Alliance's assassin, who is the operative, who wants to keep the secrets of the Alliance buried. The quest is they need to give, or the crew of Mal and his crew need to give the new solar system more freedom from the Alliance, and they can do that by releasing the information that they find. Now, the stakes, or else, is that if River is taken, the crew will die and the solar system will not know the truth about the Alliance and the Reavers. So here's a go at the sentence. Mal Reynolds, the captain of the Serenity, discovers River, one of his crew, is being pursued by the Alliance assassin, the operative, in order to bury a secret that could remove the Alliance's grip on power. Mal must find a way to reveal the secret and free the inner planets from the Alliance's ruthless grasp on power. Now, I do not like this premise at all. But one of the reasons why the premise for Serenity is so difficult to write is because it's River who triggers the inciting incident. She is being pursued, and she is also the object of desire. Now, while I've identified Mal as the protagonist, the story is about the crew. So, despite the messiness of determining the premise, the role of the antagonist is very clear right from the start. The operative wants River because he believes in the Alliance. He wants River contained because she is a threat to the Alliance's power. Why she's such a threat is revealed slowly, and it forces Mal to react and to change his object of desire. Now, is this okay? Well, yes, I think it is, because the antagonist drives the middle build and the main part of the story. The 3 stages of Mal's object of desire that are revealed are because the stakes increase. So his objects of desire change because the stakes increase, and the stakes increase because the antagonist's object of desire is slowly revealed. Now, the first object of desire that Mal has is about protecting River, and she is a member of his crew, and so it also links to the crew's safety. When the object of desire changes to getting revenge on the Alliance, the stakes have increased. So not only are the crew of the Serenity in danger, but everyone who has ever known the crew are also in danger. And then once the crew go to the planet Miranda and discover how the Alliance made the Reavers, Mal's objective changes to destroying the Alliance or at least reducing their hold over the inner planets. Now, the stakes for each object of desire are all linked. If Mal transmits the Alliance's secrets and he gets revenge, so he reduces the Alliance's power and he'll also manage to protect River and the crew. So if he can do that one thing, then all of the other three things will fall into place and he'll achieve what he eventually wants to achieve. Now, once again, trying to write a one-line premise is difficult if there are problematic parts of the plot. What does give the movie shape, and I think saves it in a way, is that the antagonist is very consistent and their object of desire is very consistent throughout the movie. This is why the log lines I read at the top of the episode are focused on the antagonist, because it is the clearest and most straightforward through line in the whole of the movie. All right, Valerie, how did you go this week with the 4 types of protagonists in Serenity?
Well, this is a terrific follow up from last week's episode when I studied the antihero protagonist type in Birds of Prey. If you listen to that episode, you'll know that I read Robert McKee's definition of an antihero. And I also read an excerpt from a book by Carl Iglesias called Writing for Emotional Impact: Advanced Dramatic Techniques to Attract, Engage, and Fascinate the Reader from the Beginning to the End. Now, in that book, Iglesias says that the antihero characters are unlikable, that they are lost souls. And because of that, in order to, and this is a quote from his book, to quote, form the crucial bond with them, the reader must understand them and admire something about them, their intelligence, their motives, their lack of options, or even a rare positive value such as loyalty to family, caring for another human being, or passion. All right, let me address the likability factor first. Like you, Melanie, I have identified Captain Malcolm Reynolds as the protagonist of the Serenity/Firefly world. In prose, yeah, I think this character would be quite unlikable. Even in film, had a different actor been cast in the role, the character would certainly be more unlikable than he is currently. However, they cast Nathan Fillion in the role of Malcolm Reynolds, and he has made a whole career out of playing the lovable rogue. He's done it very well, thank you very much. So, while Malcolm Reynolds is clearly an anti-hero and, he's not exactly a likable character, I think he's not wholly unlikable either. The other part of Iglesias' definition, though, for me is far more interesting, and that's what I want to focus on here now. Remember, he says that an antihero is a quote-unquote lost soul. I really, really like thinking about the antihero this way because I think it's the key to creating an antihero who has some kind of depth and some kind of nuance to him or her. Now, this is the third antihero in a row that we have studied. As luck would have it, this is a total fluke. But wow, what a great fluke it's been for us. So in Ronin, we had Sam. In Birds of Prey, we had Harley Quinn. And now here in Serenity, we have Malcolm Reynolds. So Sam in Ronin is not a lost soul at all. Far from it. He knows exactly who he is and exactly what his job is. And he's very good at it. Thank you very much. And he executes it like the pro he is. Fine. I don't say that as a criticism. It is what it is. I only highlight it to just say that this phrase "lost soul" does not apply to every antihero, and it certainly does not apply to Sam. Interestingly, I don't think Sam is a particularly deep or nuanced character either. Now, with Harley Quinn, we have a character who is, if not a completely lost soul, certainly much more than Sam ever was. And I went into detail about that last week. So If you haven't had a chance to listen to that episode yet, I encourage you to go back and give it some time because I think it's worth your time, if I do say so myself. Now, Harley Quinn is a comic book character. So her depth is somewhat muted because in comic book characters, I mean, we're not looking for them to have some big crisis of conscience or something, right? That's not what comic book characters do. However, she is definitely more complex and more nuanced than Sam ever is. This brings me to Malcolm Reynolds. He is also a lost soul, at least at the beginning of the film. He's definitely more lost at the beginning than he is at the end. And while I wouldn't call him highly complex or nuanced either, on the scale of shallow to complex, I think he's further toward complex than even Harley Quinn. Now, to understand Malcolm Reynolds, though, you need to know his backstory. And guess what? I said the same thing last week when we discussed Harley Quinn. Knowing her backstory is important. But it just is, and I had to get Melanie to come in and help me understand it because I didn't see the preceding movie in the Marvel Universe. Now, I can't Melanie, I gotta call on you again because I can't remember in Ronin whether Sam's backstory was ever revealed. I don't think it was. Can you remember?
No, it wasn't, but it's pretty much heavily implied. Well, he says at one stage that he's CIA, right? But
Yeah.
he's not, there's no backstory other than he's a CIA operative, which you kind of work that out yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Not the same type of backstory that Harley Quinn has, and certainly not the same type of backstory that Malcolm Reynolds has. Now, fear not. If you are not a fan of the Firefly universe, then you don't know what Malcolm Reynolds' backstory is. If you hadn't watched the whole season, there's only one season of Firefly. If you hadn't watched that, you're going to be lost, frankly, in this movie because this is a movie that assumes a certain level of viewer knowledge and familiarity. It's made for the fans of Firefly, not for a new person to just enter the universe at the Firefly stage or at the Serenity stage. The references here are more reminders to sort of refresh the memory of those who have watched Firefly. Like I said, it's not meant to inform a brand new audience as to who all these characters are. So let me fill you in on who Malcolm Reynolds is. Um, Malcolm, or Mal, as they keep calling him, is a quote unquote brown coat, which in the Firefly universe means he's a freedom fighter. He fought against the Alliance and lost. And the Battle of Serenity was particularly devastating. The Allied support that they were promised never showed up, and the platoon was completely devastated. Now, we saw this exact scenario play out in the film Darkest Hour that we studied back in season 17. So we went into detail about that then. So go back and listen to that episode if you need a refresher. The bottom line here is that having lost, Malcolm and others like him are forced to become outlaws to survive. They don't belong anywhere anymore. They have no home and no family except each other. They don't know what to believe anymore or who to trust. They are all lost souls, and Mal is their leader. He is the chief lost soul. And there's even a bit of dialogue between Mal and Shepard that talks about this loss of belief and this loss of um, an anchor, a stabilizing force in their life. Now, the dialogue in the Firefly universe and Serenity is a whole thing that I do not have time to go into. It's kind of weird. Um, so just hang in there with me. And if you're curious about studying dialogue, this might be an interesting film for you to study because okay, I'm just going to say it. I think the dialogue is awful. I find it very hard to listen to. I mean, even Alan Tudyk, who I adore, can't pull this off, except that he's a leaf on the wind. All right. And if you watch the movie, you will understand that reference. I'm a leaf on the wind. Okay, so this is the dialogue from the bit of the scene between Mal and Shepard. Mal says, I could have left her there, and her is River. I could have left her there. I had an out. Hell, I had every reason to leave her and haul anchor. Shepard, it's not your way, Mal. Only one thing is going to walk you through this. Belief. Mal, you know I always look to you for counsel, but sermons make me sleepy, Shepard. I ain't looking for help from on high. That's a long wait for a train don't come. See what I mean about the dialogue? Okay, Shepard. When I talk about belief, why do you always assume I am talking about God? And then later on his deathbed, Shepard says to Malcolm, I don't care what you believe, just believe it. So that's kind of a shorthand or a way of alluding to the fact that Mal and his entire crew have nowhere to call home because Shepard, who was in the crew in Firefly, has settled somewhere. He has built a community around him. He has a home. He is no longer a lost soul. But Malcolm and the rest of the crew, they are still. Okay, so now I want to talk a bit about that final bit of the quote from Iglesias. Now he wrote, quote, to form the crucial bond with them, being the antiheroes, the reader must understand them and admire something about them. Their intelligence, their motives, their lack of options, or even a rare positive value such as loyalty to family, caring for another human being, or passion. Aha, okay. So Malcolm Reynolds and his crew, they have no other option than to be outlaws. Fine, we can all go along with that. But I think what seals the deal, the emotional connection between the audience and the main character is the fact that Malcolm has a moral code that he lives by. It's not so much that they're forced to be outlaws. Uh, I don't think that's the thing that establishes the emotional connection, although it's kind of an interesting thing to know about them. I think it's that Malcolm has a moral code and he lives by it. We saw Malcolm save the people in the establishment that he robs. I guess it was a bank of some sort. I didn't have time to go back and look. So that's good. I mean, that establishes a moral fiber in him. And we see that he's not a man without values, right? He's there just to get the money because he has a job to do. He doesn't want to hurt anybody. And we also learn that even though he's there to steal the money and he has a job to do, he doesn't even want to be doing that, to be honest. But he has to survive, and now he has a crew to look after. This is his family, and he has to look after them, so he has to do whatever is necessary to give them safe harbor so they can have some money to buy some food and eat and repair the ship. Mal's moral code, though, is that he leaves no one behind. Now, if you saw the movie, you remember in the beginning that Malcolm does, in fact, leave a man behind. When the Reavers attack, he pushes this guy off the vehicle, and the Reavers get him. And then, in an act of mercy, Malcolm shoots the man so he isn't literally eaten alive. Zoe calls him out on this immediately. She reminds him of his moral code, that they don't leave anyone behind. And it's because of this. He doesn't appreciate being reminded in the moment, to be fair, but he takes her comment to heart. And because he does have this code that he lives by, he continues to protect River and Simon, even though it poses a risk to the other members of the crew and to himself. He cannot leave them behind because he knows they're at risk. He won't leave them behind. So here, as an anti-hero, he is making the heroic choice, which I think is really interesting. So an anti-hero is not the opposite of a hero, which is a villain, right? An anti-hero is a heroic character who has become lost, who has lost his way somehow. Now, if you think about an anti-hero that way, Melanie, to me, now we're getting into some really interesting protagonist territory. Like, there's a lot of ways you can go with, take this character in a whole lot of different genres. If you think of an anti-hero as a hero who has lost his way, haha, like that's an interesting protagonist to me. So we saw the same kind of thing with Harley Quinn, right? When she protected Cassandra. It was it would have been in her better interest just to sacrifice Cassandra, but she won't do it because she also has, it's not really a moral code, but a sense of right and wrong that she cannot ignore. So, all of this to say that if you are writing a story with an anti-hero protagonist, understand that there's still plenty of room to craft a character with depth and nuance, if of course that's the type of character that you want to create for your story. Okay, Melanie, what are your final thoughts about Serenity and the premise?
All right, so my final thoughts are that if you're writing with an ensemble cast, one of the characters has to take primacy, and the premise should be written around the primary character. Now, if the premise is vague for the protagonist, then it could indicate a bigger story problem.
And that wraps it up for this week and for the season. Join us again next week when we offer up our best advice about the 4 types of protagonists and crafting a story's premise. To support the show, please leave us a rating and review and tell your writer friends about us. If you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you want us to review your query letter and first 10 pages writing sample, go to storynerd.ca for all the details about how to submit. To join my inner circle, go to valeriefrancis.ca/inner circle. And for more information about Melanie's books, visit melaniehill.au. And remember, story theory doesn't have to be difficult. It's a tool to help you write more, not less. So take it one step at a time and have fun.